He was super conscious, and that super consciousness is
Yeah.
what saved the world from nuclear holocaust. One of the
Yeah.
reasons that the CIA, the deep state, wanted to kill him was he'd grown too bright.
Right.
He had done acid twice in the
Yeah.
White House with Mary Meyer.
Wow.
Timothy Leary had gotten acid to him back in April, before the missile crisis in April. Twice, Mary Meyer, who was the wife of Cord Meyer, who was the CIA director of MK Ultra,
Wow.
got acid to President Kennedy, and he had an epiphany about life on Earth during his acid trip. And when he came out, he was super conscious or
Wow.
Christ conscious. And he worked with Khrushchev, and we have to give credit to Nikita Khrushchev
Absolutely, man.
because it was the two of them that saved the world. And they both lost all their power. Kennedy was killed and
That's right.
Khrushchev was deposed.
Welcome to Far Out with Faust, everybody. I am Faust Chicho, and today I'm very excited to be sitting here with Robert Morningstar. Let me tell you who Robert is and what he's been up to. Buckle your safety belts. Robert is a civilian intelligence analyst. He's an investigative journalist, and he's a psychotherapist living in New York City, my former home. He's also a specialist in photo interpretation, geometric analysis, and computer imaging. He was a New York State Regent Scholar at Fordham University, where he received a degree in psychology. He's also an expert in Chinese language, history, martial arts, and he's acknowledged as a master of the Yang family Tai Chi, and he continues to teach that to this day. But hold on, I'm not done yet. He's also an FAA licensed pilot and an instrument ground instructor. He's studied the paranormal and UFOs for over 50 years. He's published many research articles and papers exposing government cover-ups, in particular, the deception applied in the JFK assassination, which, if you guys have been following my channel, you know I've been talking about. Just recently did a special on it. His work on that assassination is cited in several major books, and Robert was also the recipient of the Marquis Who's Who 2020 Albert Neal Lifetime Achievement Award for his work as a civilian intelligence analyst. If you want to hear him these days, he's the host of the Morningstar Report and the Right Stuff radio show heard on Sundays and Mondays on Revolution Radio. He's also the publisher and editor of the UFO Spotlight and UFOdigest.com. Robert, thank you so much for beaming in, man. It is an honor to have you on my show.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here, and I'm really happy to make contact with you. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. I feel like I discovered a treasure chest when I found your work. Literally, I was so excited, and then when I reached out to you and you got back to me, I've been excited since I found your work. So
thank you. I'll tell you honestly, it goes with your shirt because it's a labor of love. I love this country. I love our people, and I wish only the best for all of us. And I love John F. Kennedy, and
I know you do.
He's still a living presence in my life.
It's amazing the impact that you've had. We're going to get to JFK. Everybody who's listening, Robert has had some incredible, contributions to the JFK investigation. And some of them more recent than others, and some incredible things have come his way and happened to him regarding this, this mystery, which has really unraveled over the past, couple decades to a point where, it's a lot of people still think that it is, this, that we'll never know, that it's like Jack the Ripper. And that's not the case. It's really not the case. It's, I keep talking to people who, I love to throw around that, we'll never know, but that's not true. So if you're interested in learning more, definitely stick around. But Robert, while we're ready to begin with you, I thought, you've done some incredible work over the years with on NASA. And so, NASA, they've got a pretty good marketing guy these days. I can walk down the street and I see NASA hats and NASA sweatshirts, and I'm like, wow, they're really, I know they need the money, but they're stepping it up,
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
And but most people who know and who have done a little bit of homework know there's kind of two faces to NASA. You
Yes.
know, there's the public persona, and then there's the other side of NASA. And so NASA usually does come with some controversy. You know, a lot of people knew, you know, and you can't blame them. You can tell something's off, you know, with the moon landing, and some people, you know, just don't believe it happened at all. I'm not one of those people, but, you know, I could see why they would think that it was a complete sham, because, you know, you inject enough bullshit into something,
right,
and it's enough to spoil everything.
yeah.
So, but you've done some awesome, like, you know, I know in 2004 you did a presentation, and I know that was about Mars, but you did it in front of a peer-reviewed panel.
Yes, that was a see, my observations of the planet Mars in 2003 were a life-altering experience. When I heard that Mars was coming closer to Earth than it had in 60,000 years, I said, I can't miss this. But my buddy in astronomy, he and I had been doing astronomy since the mid-80s. We'd go up to the top of a 24-story building here in New York, set up the telescope, and that's how I learned the cosmos, the skies, and the stars. He got married and moved out of town with the telescope. So I scrounged around, and I used my rent money to buy what was about the equivalent of $1,000 telescope with a 128x super plaza lens, right? Short lens that really magnifies the. I can't miss this. You know? So Mars comes around, closest point that it had come to Earth in 60,000 years. Actually 66,000 years. And it was only 34.6 million miles away. When I looked through my telescope, I saw Mars as big as the full moon. And I saw in one glance how badly we've been lied to and deceived by NASA. Because everything that they produced, including the next day, they produced a photograph they claimed was from Hubble. Everything, all the livingness of Mars was gone. I saw Mars with a beautiful air glow that looked like it stretched up 50 miles into the atmosphere. It glowed like a pink halo around it, and a brilliant orange, red-orange rust color. But shockingly, I saw clouds that were 1,000 miles long, rolling off the Tarsus Montes, where the face on Mars is in this region, close to the Tarsus region. And through the telescope, I could see roll clouds. These are clouds that come off a cliff, so they start to twirl and they make logs. And these logs, 1,000-mile long clouds, were going over Mars. Then I saw electrical activity. We have the aurora borealis. I had to make up a new term for this, what I saw. This plasma was going from the North Pole of Mars over the whole planet to the South Pole of Mars, back and forth like a slinky.
Wow.
So I coined the term aurora australoborealis. But the thing that shocked me most was over the course of an hour, I saw a black spot coming slowly around the turn. And when it really fully turned and looked at me, I was frightened. I felt dread.
Wow.
There are a lot of kinds of fear, you know, anxiety, you feel scared, you feel,
yeah.
But dread is something that you feel in the pit of your stomach.
Ooh, it's the worst.
You know, it's because a dread is of something in the future. You know, it's not present. It's like, oh, this is bad news. So what I saw was what is called the eye of Mars. There's a trench or an asteroid impact so deep on Mars that the light doesn't reach the bottom of the pit until 11 o'clock in the morning. And so when the sunlight is streaming across it at morning or evening, that whole area is pitch black and looks like the pupil of an eye.
Wow.
So when Mars turned and looked at me, and I use that term literally, I looked Mars eye to eye, and I saw this black pupil, but with a black tear streaming down.
Wow.
It was like Alice Cooper's eye. And I saw in one glance how Mars' ecosystem was totally destroyed in one instant, digging out a trench that cracked the planet. That's why this thing that I saw is what cracked the planet and caused the Valles Marineris. You know,
Wow.
the
Yeah.
2,500-mile long Grand Canyon of
Yeah.
Mars. But it also flattened, pushed the planet in. So there's these highlands called the Tarsus Highlands, which is the topographical or orographical reason why the clouds are spinning off and turning into roll clouds. The other thing I saw is that Mars has an atmosphere, and NASA's been lying to us about everything: the color, the atmosphere, the density, and God knows what else. Also, water.
Water.
There's
Yeah.
water. There's water on Mars. I have found water all over the place.
You know, and so then they come out and they say, oh no, well, we've detected we've detected water, you know, but then you see pictures and you're like, well, so did I. You couldn't see it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
exactly.
I'm so glad that your instruments have found it. But did you look at the pictures? Because it appears that there is literally running water right there.
You know, there's a group in NASA that operates this way. You know, they just slip the picture out and don't say another thing about it. For example, the portal, about 2 months, 2.5 months ago, a portal, a doorway. I mean, really.
I was just going to ask you about that. Did you see that? I mean, like literally.
I can show it to you. Do you want me to show it to you? I'll take you through a little spin through my book, my ebook. That's called it's called A Martian Revelation.
Sure.
So right now, if I can start to share, let me get the picture up first. You know, it's better to do it that way. Based on Mars, the portal, sure. We'll go through many portals here.
Here we go.
Yeah, so the portal is okay. First, let me take this really cut to the chase. Okay. I'm going to show you the real face on Mars. We've heard about this term for many years. Now, this is not the face on Mars that you're generally used to. Here we're going back. This is what we call coral. This is something that was found on Mars very recently.
Wow.
And it looks like it is alive or was alive or grew out of the sands of Mars. Okay, this is what I wanted to show you. Here in the center is what is traditionally called the face on Mars. This is the slant range photograph that was taken in 1998. And I rectified it. It's a slant range, meaning that it was at a tilt. So you saw a lot of the left side of the face and some of the right side of the face. But I was able to put in the computer and rotate it so we're looking at it face on. So this is the famous face on Mars that we've been looking at since 1976 in various forms of and various degrees of resolution. So I was studying this on April 15th, 1998. I was contemplating it late in the night. And that was the night that the Titanic went down, by the way. And there wasn't a peep about it. So I was meditating on that. So I meditated from midnight to 2 o'clock in the morning when the ship actually did slip under the waves. And then I was energized and still in a contemplative mood. And I did this work. What I then did, as I saw that if you split this face, you'd get two other faces or half faces. So what I did is I split the face and I mirrored. I just split the face and I took this side and I mirrored it. And what came out was this face.
Wow, look at that.
Which I recognize as a lioness. You know? That's what I say to myself. Dang, that looks like a female lion.
Certainly does.
And so I named it the face of Sekhmet, the Egyptian goddess of war. So then I went back to this face and I split it in half and I took this side, the left side, and I mirrored that. And what came out was this face, which to me is a bearded man, nose, brows, and a conical hat. And I said, well, I'll be damned. Could that be Osiris? Right. So, you know, this is how my eyes see. You know, I study, as you know, geometric analysis is my specialty because I've studied sacred geometry from the masters, from the architect royal of the London College of art and architecture. I was taught this in 1979 through 85
Awesome.
by Professor Keith Critchlow. It's basically the geometry that makes holy things holy.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of sacred geometry. I don't know if you have, if you could see, I have a bit of it in back.
I noticed those right away. So let me go back to Osiris. So this was the second face I found. And I'm contemplating it again. You know, I'm in a very, very sedate and tranquil state of mind. I meditated all night, and my mind and my brain is really wide open on my inside as well. So I kept looking at this, and something said, you know, there's something else there. You know, look at it, Robert. There's something else there. And I said, well, what can I do? You know, I already split the picture, and I've already mirrored. And then it hit me. Rotate it. Flip it. Do a 180 degree flip. And what happened was I flipped that picture without any other changes, and it turns into a hawk.
Look at that.
An eagle. Horus the falcon.
Wow.
Found on Mars. So that's just one sample of the Martian Revelation e-file book.
Yeah.
I have 2 books that I have marketed on my own, no publishers, because no publisher would ever publish 1,000 pages of Mars and 900 pages of the moon. But I compiled all of my best work into 2 volumes, and I call them e-file books, encyclopedic or encyclopedia file books. There's a compilation of all the best Mars photographs and articles that I've ever written.
We're going to include a link to that ebook in the video description for everyone who's following along and playing with us at home. That way you guys can go to town on this if you want to.
Okay. Recent discovery. What does this look like to you?
It looks like a little net.
Looks like a little net, and it looks to me like snakeskin.
Yeah. Yeah. Or, I mean, look at the geometry. It's definitely
molted. It looks to me like molted snakeskin. That was my impression. This has been recently found on Mars. George John Haas found the picture. I saw it. I dubbed it, you know, Martian molted snakeskin. And then we went at it on a program, Richard Hoagland's The Other Side of Midnight. I'm a regular contributor, mentor and tormentor to Richard, because, you know, we're bosom buddies and brothers, but when it comes to politics,
oh yeah,
it's
I know how that can be.
You know? So anyway, this thing was discovered on Mars, you know, and it's not ancient.
No,
and it didn't come off the rover. So where did
it doesn't go with this sterile
exactly,
you know, I mean, I don't understand why they are constantly being whipped into, you know, the dumbing everything down and keeping the truth. I mean,
but we have to be grateful to the good guy in NASA.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, like, I just put out the picture. I didn't look at it. So anyway, that's one. Let's see what's next. This is really interesting. This was discovered by in a photograph by Nigel Thompson. He's a Marsologist like we are. You know, he just dives into the Mars images. We found this satellite dish, right? That's what we dubbed it, satellite dish. Look
at that.
Look at the mandala. Look at the geometry. Look how one side is folded over something. Oh, this is more fun. Who's waiting for us on Mars? Yeah, I like to have a lot of fun too. Sand surfing. Why don't we do some sand surfing on Mars? You know, it's interesting to get back. We can come back to the images a bit later. I think that was a good share. Can you turn off the screen sharing?
Yeah, got it.
Thank you. So, yeah, that's the kind of fun I like to have on Mars.
That's my kind of fun.
Yeah. But what I saw was a planet that was completely wrecked, devastated in one night. Tidal waves all over the planet because the impact was so great.
Oh, just completely catastrophic.
Through the oceans, out of their beds, washed everything over itself, created one big muddy mess. And the night before, I'd seen another amazing sight. that came around. It looked dark as it was coming around, but when it turned to me, it was all white. And it was the Hellas Basin, which is about 600 kilometers it's oblong, so one axis is 600 kilometers, and it was full of fog. And I saw an
Wow.
ocean of fog and waves of fog. The waves of fog were reflecting rainbows.
No
It was a
kidding.
rainbow iridescent surface of fog, and the sides or the walls of this basin were undulating. I could see the striation, and it looked like the Grand Canyon. So you
Wow.
score into Mars, it's just like the Grand Canyon. So I wrote an article that I had seen this site, and the next day NASA came out because I was publishing on UFO Digest, which
Hmm.
became a premier UFO site and paranormal site. And then a day later, NASA comes out and says the Hellas Basin is a self-contained ocean of CO2, of carbon dioxide. But then they gave a lie away, right? They said that the CO2 was kept permanently inside the Hellas Basin by planetary winds that were blowing so quickly over the basin that it was like putting a lid on a boiling pot of water. And I said to myself, these
What?
guys have been telling us that the atmosphere on Mars is so thin, it's like 100,000 feet.
Yeah.
And yet we see pictures of Mars totally occluded, obstructed by global sandstorms.
Right.
So much sand that you can't see Mars for a couple of months. That
Come on.
couldn't happen if there were no atmosphere.
No,
And
no.
and 200-mile-an-hour winds couldn't manifest to scour the planet if the atmosphere was that lean, that thin. So
Again,
you see that they
we
tell you one thing, show you a picture, and cognitive
no,
dissonance is the
that's it.
result.
And they've been doing this for so long that we're going to get into it. They started doing this, in my opinion, and it's so funny. I've been saying this, and I started saying this right before I really found you and your work because it became so apparent to me, that really, yeah. I mean, you have to go back to World War II, but the misdirection, the cognitive dissonance that they demand from you really started with JFK and
Oh yeah.
that trend that they have, continued to parlay with and double down on and then, make a mess trying to adhere to it. That misdirection that they're like, don't believe what you understand to be true about what you're
That's right.
seeing.
That's
Don't
right.
believe physics.
Mm-hmm.
Believe our science or our instruments.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like over and over and over. But my God, it's so obvious to
Let
me.
me
It
expose that
started then.
deception. Let
Go
me
ahead.
expose the principal deception in the JFK assassination. My first contribution to the JFK assassination research was my discovery in 1992 of what I call the film that fooled the world. Now, that title comes from a vision that I had 2 years before I made the discovery. In 1990, I was having a transatlantic romance with a beautiful lady in Switzerland.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to visit her, and when I was there in Bern, Switzerland, it's very close to the Matterhorn. And ever since I was a little boy, I always wanted to fly around the Matterhorn because I saw the science fiction movie as a kid called The Crawling Eye. And it's about aliens on the mountainside in Switzerland. They show the Matterhorn. And the only person who was safe from the crawling eye was two guys in the airplane, the surveillance pilot and then the bomber pilot who knocks him out. So I always said to myself, I'm going to be a pilot and I'm going to fly the Matterhorn. So I decided, today's the day. I'm here. I can do it, So I reserved an airplane and a mountain guide and planned my flight that night. I went to sleep. When I went to sleep, I had a remote viewing vision of the future that was presented to me in an amazing sequence of symbols. I saw myself inside a cave, an ice cave.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously I was in the ice cave or a crystal cave in Switzerland. There's a famous, German movie called The Blue Light. And it's about a cave in the Alps. So I'm in there. It's an ice cave. It's huge. And I see a desk and a wizened old man sitting at the desk, you know. And I walked up to him and he said to me, I am the angel of history. Come, let me show you what your people have done with your history. So he led me into the cave and he had a light. And as we were going through the cave was gigantic in the beginning, then it got small, and it was an ice tunnel. And I'm walking through the ice tunnel and I looked to the left and there was a body in the ice. And it was a blonde, beautiful blonde woman in the ice. And I could see her form and the color, not the exact details. But I said to her, that's Marilyn Monroe.
Yeah.
Couldn't be anybody else. And the angel says, follow me. And I keep walking. And then I look to the right and there was a man in a blue suit and tie on the right. And I said, my God, that guy looks like a Hollywood movie star. He looks like a cross between Burt Lancaster and Kirk Douglas.
Mm-hmm.
And then we keep walking. So I've been in caves many times in my life. So in this vision, I'm following the angel of history,
Mm-hmm.
who's leading me to show me what our people have done with our history. So we come and I'm walking, and all of a sudden my legs want to go right. My feet and legs instincts go to the right. But there's a gigantic boulder and no passage there. And the angel says, come this way. So I turned away from it and walked to the left, where my feet didn't want to go, you know, because of the shape of the floor. It doesn't seem like the right way to go. So he leads me, and now it starts getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And we have to crouch, and we get to a dead end. And the angel takes the light and he points to the dead end in history. And he says, you see what your people have done with your history?
Wow.
They have led you to the end of mankind. You must go back and tell your people. So I looked at him and I walked back through the cave. We walked back through the cave. This time I was leading on the way out. He was behind me. And I'm walking out and I came to that point, that junction where my legs wanted to go to the right, but I was forced to go to the left. So I went up this time. Before I just looked at the boulder. This time I walked up to it. When I walked up to it, I touched it. And I said, oh my God, this is not a real boulder. This is paper mache. It's a total construction. It's wood and plaster and paint and paper. And then I looked up and it was starting to break up at the top. The top section had fallen out and there was a crawl space there. And I could have crawled up there and like gone through it. I said, but that won't do me any good. We got to remove this whole thing and I'm going to need help. So I walked back through the cave and the angel had said, go back and tell your people. So when I came out of the cave, I was seated in a theater in a seat with my Swiss girlfriend on my left, and we were waiting for a movie. The curtain goes up and the movie opens and it said, The Film That Fooled the World.
Wow.
That was the title. And I looked off to the right and I saw all the people of Asia in the theater were all on the right. And I looked off to the left and all the people of Africa were there. And then I looked down and it was all the people of South America and North America. We were all this audience and we were being forced to watch this film because there were armed guards in the front of the theater looking at the audience. And if anyone took his eyes off the film, he was shot.
Wow.
And I know it because I was watching the film and I noticed some guy on my right turned his head away from the screen. The guy in the front blew his head off.
Wow.
I said, wow, this is serious. They kill people for taking your eyes off the screen, away from the film that fooled the world. They have to keep playing it over and over, and the whole world has to keep watching it. But I said, no, I'm not gonna, I gotta get out of here. So I got this idea. I took my girlfriend's hand and I said, Barbara, stand up but keep looking at the screen. And we stood up and we kept looking at the screen. And the zombies in the front, they saw us stand up. Oh, he's looking at the screen. I don't have to kill him. So I said, okay, Barbara, walk sideways, but don't take your eyes off the screen. So we sidled out into the aisle. And then I said, Barbara, walk backwards, but don't take your eyes off the screen. So we walk backwards. We hit the doors. We break out backwards, right? And then we run, trying to get out of the theater. But when I ran downstairs and tried to open the door had been chained shut from the outside. So I was in the global theater in which all the people of the world were being forced to watch the film that fooled the world.
Mm-hmm. And you were locked in.
God, yeah, gotta get out of here. So we go running, and I went up a winding stairwell, and I found a second floor window. I threw it open, and I looked, and it was a 50-foot plunge into a torrential river.
Wow.
And I said to her, it's our only chance. We're not going to live the rest of our lives enslaved watching this forced movie. We got to take a chance. Let's jump. So I took her hand and we jumped. We got 50 feet and plunged through ice cold water. And the last vision was me swimming up, our hand in my hand, climbing up, swimming up toward this brilliant blue light, which just happens to look like this thing here. That's the color of the light and the brilliant glow of it. And I broke out through the water, and I took a huge breath, and I go, oh my God, what was that all about? Well, I found out 2 years later. 2 years later, on November 21st, 1991, I guess that would have been the 28th anniversary. Yeah, the 28th anniversary of the assassination. I got sick and I couldn't go to work. I'd been working for days straight because I work for myself. And I got a little bit of a cold. So I said, I'm going to stay home tonight. And then I got a tape because the TV station, CBS News hard copy, said, tonight we're going to show you the full Zapruder film. I go, what? They never show that. So I grabbed the tape, and it was a black track tape. I threw it in the recorder. So I was ready. And I got the best recording of the best reproduction of the Zapruder film that has ever been done. These guys, David Lifton and Axel Wexler, and a guy named Mo Dallas, something like that, a mobster. They got to see the Zapruder film. When they got shown the Zapruder film, they took it and put it in the machine and copied it really quickly to 35 millimeter. So this was a bumped up version of the Zapruder film.
Oh, wow.
So I get a copy of this. And a couple of months later, the whole JFK movie thing explodes.
That's Oliver Stone's movie, right?
Yeah. And some people started saying the Secret Service driver shot the president.
Yeah.
Well, that's crazy. And so I run the film, and I had purchased the best VCR available at the time of Panasonic. They could do still frame by frame, and stop motion. So I started playing it. And the first time I blinked. The second time I played in slow motion. I saw these splice marks going by, at least six splice marks, but unique splice marks, not just cut and join, but cut, something interposed in proportion to the frame. And I said, this is really strange. And what is it doing? Oh, I see it. It's an optical illusion. They cut out 10 feet of film in the Zapruder film, and then they spliced it to join. So what was missing, I found over years and years of investigation, was that President Kennedy had been hit by 5 shots.
Wow.
The reason I'm doing this is to give you an idea of how this tampering is done. Imagine that I put a piece of Scotch tape across my fingertips like that, stretch it out. Okay? And now instead of Scotch tape, imagine that I've got the Zapruder film stretched out across, the real Zapruder film, in which there were 5 shots. Shot number 1, shot number 2, 3, 4, 5. There were more, but see, the 5 captured by the Zapruder. So now I have the problem that the Warren Commission had. You have a film that shows the president getting hit 5 times. How do you fix that? Okay, I'll tell you. You cut the time between the first shot and the second shot here. Cut that out, and you join those 2 shots to make it appear it was 1. This is what happened when the car passed the sign. The car went to the sign, it stopped. The president got hit in the back. He stood up and he said, oh my God, I've been shot. And the Secret Serviceman heard him.
That's
and
right.
He fell back into the seat, and then the car started to crawl out. And the next thing you see is when Kennedy goes like this. But in the frame before, in the first frame when the car emerges from behind the sign, the president is holding his abdomen like this, which is exactly what would happen to you if you got shot in the back in a downward trajectory and the bullet went right through you into your stomach.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, I've been shot. In the next frame, you see his arms go to this.
That's
which
when
is
he
when
got
the
shot.
throat,
Right.
the throat shot. So you took 2 shots by cutting out that strip of film and joining it. You cut out 2 shots and made them 1.
Right.
The car goes on. We're going to skip this one for a moment. This is Z295. In Z295, there's a visible vapor trail.
That's
in
right.
the Zapruder film that I discovered because I hypothesized that if, and as I knew, the atmosphere was really wet. It had rained all night.
Mm-hmm.
It was 80
humid.
degrees, so all the moisture was rising. I said, it's possible there could have been these trails left, visible trails. So when I started looking through this, I found it, Z295. That was another huge claim to fame because Z295 is just 1 second away from Z313. Z295, 13 and 5, 18 frames. The FBI said
Right.
18 frames per second. So 1 second, nobody could reload in 1 second.
No.
Right? Especially Oswald, that thing took at least 2.5 seconds just to chamber,
Right.
cock and recock it, right? So now we get to the grassy knoll. The car stopped at the grassy knoll.
That's right.
Right? And they had to cut out that stop completely because the legend is the car never stopped, right?
Right.
So the car stopped. And at that point, 3 shots hit the president simultaneously, within 1 second of each other. And 1 shot came in from the right like this. And the vapor trail, not the vapor trail, the copper trail is visible in Z313. The first frame where the head explodes, you can see a trail of copper, alternating copper space. The bullet was tumbling or rotating.
Mm-hmm.
So that one hits here, opens up his head. The next one enters the front and comes out the back.
Right.
And so that had to be hidden. So what they did, and as I said, there were 3 shots because this thing continues for several frames. You cut out this space and this space and this, and you've taken 3 shots and make it look like 1.
Right.
And because the effects on the body were the effects of 3 shots, it makes no sense to anybody who studies physics.
Right.
It's
or
not
ballistics.
Possible. Right. It's not possible. And the witness testimony. So that was my second. My main first contribution. The next one, and I think the most important one, was uncovering the JFK Tippit body swap.
JD Tippit, yeah.
JD Tippit. This is the police officer who was shot purportedly by Oswald.
Yeah.
Police officer was definitely assassinated.
Yeah.
But Oswald was already in the theater watching the movie.
That's right.
Okay? So the Oswald double killed Officer Tippit. But when he killed Officer Tippit, he got the drop on him. Tippit got out of the car to talk to him. As he was crossing, he whipped out the gun. He plugged him 3 times.
Right.
In the abdomen. And then Tippit fell. He walked over to him. He put the gun to his head and he fired 1 shot into his head.
Right.
And Tippit's body was swept up. Ambulance was there instantly.
That's right.
Took him away. Went to
first they went to
Methodist Hospital.
Right.
Yeah, and then they had the judge declare him dead on arrival. Send him to Parkland for an autopsy.
Transfer him. Why?
That's right. So all of this is happening within half an hour. While Johnson is stalling on the airport tarmac. We can't leave until.
That's right. And there's mayhem in the city.
Right.
Total mayhem. Yeah.
They send him down. In the meantime, there's a big wrestling match over the body between the Secret Service and Errol Rose, the car. You can't take that body out of Texas. That guy's murdered, shot in Texas, and it's a Texas autopsy that's got to be done. And the Secret Service steals the body and races off to Love Field. Then the upshot is this. I grew up with John F. Kennedy as my hero. I saw him in 1958, and this guy's really strange, man. He looks like Flash Gordon, and he talks like somebody from England, but what he says makes a lot of sense. So I knew John F. Kennedy, his picture, everything, And then I looked at this book, Best Evidence, which purportedly had the autopsy pictures.
Yeah.
So I opened the book and I went, instantly said, that doesn't look like John F. Kennedy in 1963. He's too skinny, it looks like John F. Kennedy in 1948 or 1950, but not 1963. So I closed the book, put it back in the shelf. A couple of years later, I came across that book again and read it. And that gave me the key to solving this mystery. David Lifton, author of Best Evidence, he wasn't convinced either, you know?
No,
So
I know.
he got the autopsy report, the Warren Commission autopsy report.
That's
and
right.
He took the autopsy report to a surgeon at the University of California, Berkeley. And he said, "Doctor, I'd like you to tell me what this man died of." And he said, "I have his autopsy." He didn't tell him who. And he says, "Okay." And he reads it with the parasagittal laceration of the right hemisphere, cerebral peduncles destroyed. And he says, "This man sounds like to me like he was killed with an axe." And Lifton says, "What?" He says, "He sounds like he was killed like with an axe because there's a big slice in the right side of his brain."
Right.
So Lifton goes, "How can that be?" So you read the autopsy report, and it describes a whole brain, 2 hemispheres, including the cerebral
intact,
peduncles and hypothalamus.
In one piece.
In one piece. But we know from the film that it was vaporized, and there was at the most 60% of a brain there.
And we know from the doctors who you know, kind of in a futile manner tried to see if there was any kind of life left, and they all testified that
they could see right through the hole.
That's right.
From here to here. One doctor, you know, they had to be careful. They were walking on fire.
Yes.
You know, testifying. One doctor, Dr. Carrico, saw the wounds, and they said to him, "Well, doctor, what did it look like? A wound of entry or a wound of exit?" And Dr. Carrico said, "It looked like both." And I said to myself, "What? Is he saying the bullet made a U-turn?"
Yeah.
Right? Well, no. He was telling the truth. It was crisscross. He got caught in a crossfire, and these excellent marksmen put bullets through one head.
Yeah.
One was an explosive bullet. Brain matter went up into the air, created a white cloud for a moment. This is testified by the CIA analyst at the NPIC, National Photographic Interpretation Center, who saw the uncut film.
Wow.
And then he saw the cut film, and he said, "This is not what I saw on Friday night." Because it went boom, the plane went up, and then it rained down. So they had to cut all of that out.
Yeah.
And that's what I discovered. But
so,
then
go ahead.
The Tippit body swap. Officer Tippit bore such a close resemblance to President Kennedy that his friends on the police department used to rib him and call him Jack and JFK.
That's right.
And that was not a nice thing in Dallas in 1960.
No, they hated him.
They hated Kennedy. Turns out that Tippit was also the best friend of Jack Ruby.
Jack Ruby, yeah.
Jack Ruby said, now get this, you got to put this all together to really wrap your head around the deception and the code words. Ruby said he shot Oswald because Oswald had killed a good man, like he killed President Kennedy.
Richard Nixon's best buddy, calling JFK as...
That's right. You learned about that. That's very good.
Yeah.
So he says, "I shot Oswald because he killed President Kennedy, a good man like that." But when you realize that Tippit was called Jack, JFK, and President Kennedy by this circle of friends,
oh yeah,
he's talking about, "I killed Oswald because he killed my best buddy, Officer Tippit, whom I used to call President Kennedy."
Right.
But the pictures that are in the morgue, they are not President Kennedy. They are Officer Tippit, and his brain was used for the autopsy. It was a full brain. The bullet went in here and it hit here, didn't come out. So when they did the removal of the bullet, they had to do a parasagittal laceration of the brain and slice it open, reach in, take out the bullet, and then take that brain and give it to the Warren Commission autopsist, put it in the body perhaps of President Kennedy or in the Tippit body. Because when Humes, one of the doctors, the pathologist, Dr. Humes, went to the body that was presented to him, he went like this to the brain, and he said, "Oh, it just popped right out."
Literally fell out.
And the brain cannot pop right out because the brain is attached by the dura mater and the pia mater, and it's attached to the brain stem.
Unless it was,
and the spinal column.
haphazardly stuffed in. Then it
Yeah,
could.
exactly. But I have to hand it to the FBI. Those guys, some of those guys did their jobs.
Yeah.
Siebert and O'Neill.
That's right.
They
Siebert
saw
and
the
O'Neill.
body in Dallas, and they saw it in the emergency trauma room. Then they saw the body they brought out in Washington, and they said, "Oh, it was obvious that surgery had been performed specifically to the top of the skull." Put that down in the notes.
Right.
And then the information that I have about Tippett, about his wounds, Vincent Drain, an FBI agent named Vincent Drain, and another one named Arthur Carter did that investigation. And I got my hands on the autopsy in 1993. And that's how I unraveled this whole mystery. Skullduggery at its worst.
Just
a ritual murder.
Vile,
Vile ritual satanic murder.
Yep.
Astronomically chosen to correspond with the day on which Osiris was assassinated.
Wow.
Osiris, according to Egyptian history, was killed on a day when Mars was transiting Scorpio. And on that day, President Kennedy said cryptically to his chief of staff, last night would have been the perfect night to assassinate a president of the United States.
Oh, wow.
What's he talking about? He knew.
There's a lot of people who I'm realizing that he was more aware.
Oh man, he was super conscious. He was super conscious, and that super consciousness is what saved the world from nuclear holocaust. One of the reasons that the CIA, the deep state, wanted to kill him was he'd grown too bright.
Right.
He had done acid twice in the White House with Mary Meyer.
Wow.
Timothy Leary had gotten acid to him back in April, before the missile crisis in April. Twice, Mary Meyer, who was the wife of Cord Meyer, who was the CIA director of MK Ultra, got acid to President Kennedy. And he had an epiphany about life on Earth during his acid trip. And when he came out, he was super conscious, or Christ conscious. And he worked with Khrushchev, and we have to give credit to Nikita Khrushchev.
Absolutely, man.
Because it was the two of them that saved the world. And they both lost all their power. Kennedy was killed, and Khrushchev was deposed a year later. During the seventh game of the World Series between the New York Yankees and the St. Louis Cardinals. I'll never forget those days.
Wow.
So this is real history, folks. I'm restoring your history, the right track of history, because the angel was showing me America got on the wrong track of history and is leading everyone to the end of humanity. And only by getting back to the right track of history, by removing that boulder of fake plaster, paint, paper mache that was fashioned to block us from entering the whole of history. Yeah. It is our destiny, and we're doing it. We're doing it.
There should only have been one world war to settle all. You have a society that is a civilization that is coming into a certain level of consciousness. We've organized and we've had a global dispute. Now that should be that. Okay. Yes. But what happened was there was a lot of powers and greed and power hungry people who saw opportunity, and World War II represents the schism, I think, in our lost century, because World War II should have never happened, but it was, it was the
engineered,
first time,
just like all of this
orchestrated.
Orchestrated.
That's right.
And
how many people died?
I call it a global theater, and these people, the global elite, as Putin calls them. Putin says American people are not our enemies. The Europeans are. It's the global elite that has hijacked all those countries and is trying to impose a new world order. And any country, he says, any country that wants to be individual and independent, sovereign, is labeled a fascist country. Yeah,
that's right.
A terrorist country, totalitarian country.
right across the board, over and
I'm going
over
to
and
send
over.
you. I'm going to send you the speech that Putin and his Minister of Defense gave recently in Moscow at the 10th Moscow International Conference on Cybersecurity. It's a real
Okay.
eye opener, telling the people the truth, the whole world the truth.
Awesome. I
about.
look forward to it. You know, when you met, just to before we close out on, not that you can ever kind of close out on JFK, but you know, you met William Newman and his wife, and so
Oh, yes.
for everyone listening, William Newman was probably the closest eyewitness to Kennedy at the point
Not in
when
the car.
not
The
who
closest person
who
to
literally
Kennedy
wasn't
who was not
in the car, right?
was
This is,
William Newman.
you can orchestrate and puppeteer all the people you want, but there were so many people around. You know, they were never going to be able to put this fire completely out. And you have people like Willie Newman, who was there with his family,
wife and his child,
his wife and his infant child, you know, who came out to see the president, and they were literally right there. They were like 15, 20 feet from JFK. And I know you got a chance to talk to him.
Oh, yes.
Robert. And so he told you some things, and of course you were like, that's
right. Actually, let me tell you how I approached him. I saw William Newman the day it happened. I saw him repeat. They kept saying what he and his wife said. And this is what he and his wife said. We were watching the president coming down Elm Street. And when he got to the sign, something happened. And he stood up. And we thought that he was going along with a gag or something. And you remember, he goes like this. He goes, and we thought he was going along with a gag or something. So this is how I pieced together what is missing from the Zapruder film. Because when the car went by the sign, he popped up and he fell down. That's Zapruder's testimony. Zapruder, before the Warren Commission, said, I was filming him, and when he got by the sign, I saw him pop up and pop down. He said, no, the car, you couldn't have seen it because the sign was blocking him. He said, no, I saw him. His red brown hair, I saw him pop up and pop down. So this is one thing that Zapruder said. And Newman said, when he got by the sign, he stood up, and he looked like he was going along with a gag or something. What he was saying was like, oh my God, I've been shot. But Newman at that point couldn't possibly believe that. So he thought it was a prank that President Kennedy was pulling.
Oh my God.
Right? See? So I meet Mr. William Newman, and I saw that how many times he's discredited on television. You know, the CBS would interview him, ABC would interview him. There was the trial of Lee Harvey Oswald, where he gave his testimony. And Vincent Bugliosi, playing the prosecutor, plays the Zapruder film. And he said, now, Mr. Newman, you claim that you saw the president stand up in a car. And he said, well, you just saw the Zapruder film. And obviously that didn't happen. And, you know, he's befuddled. Like, what? I know what I saw. I said what I saw. It's not on the Zapruder film. I don't know.
Yeah.
So I went up to him and I said, Mr. Newman, I've known you. This was the 30th.
That's right. It was
the 33rd anniversary of the assassination on that day. And I said, Mr. Newman, you know, I've known you since the day you saw the president. I saw you on CBS. I've seen you over the years. And I know every time that you get on TV, I know what they do to you. I saw you with Mr. Bugliosi in the trial of Lee Harvey Oswald, and they showed you the Zapruder film, and you didn't know what to say. But I'm going to tell you what to do. I'm going to tell you something. They all fooled you. I believe you. I know that what you saw is true. And I'd like you to tell me exactly what you saw. And I had my camera, and I was running out of battery. So I turned off the screen to save battery. And he says to me, every time they interview me, they change my testimony. I never said that it came from the grassy knoll. I never said that it came from the Texas School Book Depository. I always said it came from directly behind me. And when you see his position, the grassy knoll is over here. The pergola porch is over here, right behind him.
Right.
And in recent years, I have found the vapor trail, a second frame of the trail that I said in Z313, a copper trail goes right directly to Kennedy's head. Well, in the Nix film, I found that trail coming from the pergola porch, which is right behind Mr. Newman.
Right behind him.
But I remember he said,
he said he saw the president's ear shot off, didn't he?
That's what he thought, and I explained that to him. What he saw was the president hit This opened up, and the
Yeah.
second bullet go through. His ear was here, but what his eye followed was the piece of the skull, which was about the size of the ear. The piece of the
Yes.
skull flew off and almost hit Mr. Brem and his son.
That's right.
See, so the optical illusions are multifarious.
Mm-hmm.
So I explained this to Mr. Newman, and he says to me, and he said, it came from right behind me. He went like this,
Mm-hmm.
right over his shoulder. So putting all of these things together, I'll tell you something else. This has been a spiritual experience for me because I almost died of fright from a ghost that came to me on the night that Ronald Reagan was shot.
No kidding.
At Oberlin College, a ghost. I lay down in bed 1 minute, 1 minute later, still breathing, contemplating, thinking about the events of the day, saying to myself, something evil
Mm-hmm.
walking this planet, stalking good men and kill. And it's always the same story.
That's right.
The lone assassin. Tonight it was Hinckley. A couple of months ago, it was Chapman and John Lennon.
Mm-hmm.
Before that, it was Hahn and James Earl Ray and
Martin Luther King.
I saw it. Yeah,
Malcolm
James
X.
Earl Ray, they framed him and they framed Oswald. So something's wrong here. So I'm lying there in the light because there was a street lamp even with my room, and the light was coming in the room, and I see this figure come right through the wall and in slow motion go across. Slow
Wow.
motion, slow. And I start to tremble and my body starts to freak out. And my mind is looking at this visage, this person, and my brain said, my God, this is the most powerful person that's ever walked the earth. And he kept coming really slowly, so slowly, like I do Tai Chi.
Yeah.
And I said to myself, he knows I'm scared. He knows I'm frightened out of my wits, but he's trying to approach me and keep me calm, approaching me in a Tai Chi walk.
Mm-hmm.
And he keeps coming and coming. And as the closer he got, the paroxysms of terror going through my body. And I seized on something, which was that in 1975, when my Tai Chi grandmaster, Professor Cheng Man-ching, died in Taiwan, 3 days later, his ghost came to me.
Mm.
And I got scared then.
Yeah.
But he said to me, don't be afraid, Robert. Nothing can harm you. And I trusted it.
Yeah.
And he walked over to me and he touched me right here. And he blessed me. And he downloaded knowledge into me.
Wow.
And I went back to that.
Good thinking.
And nothing can harm me. So I started saying to this ghost, I love you, but I don't want to see your face. I love you, but I don't want to see your face. And I was crying. As he turned the foot of my bed, I said, oh my God, this is death. Because my heart was going,
Of course.
And I said, this is death. This is why they find people dead in their sleep in the morning. He said, boy, I had a heart attack.
Yeah.
Then he turns and coming, now he's coming, looming over me. And I look at it and this whiteness, and I said, oh my God, this is antimatter.
Yeah.
And if we touch, poof, annihilation.
Yeah.
And then he comes and he's wearing a veil. He's white from head to foot. He's in a white gown, a white headdress, and a white shroud.
Hmm.
And he's leaning over, and I thought he was going to lift the shroud. And I said, please don't lift the veil.
Yeah.
If you lift the veil, I'm really strong, but if you lift the veil, I think I'll die. Please don't lift the veil. And then he took the veil and he pressed it against his face. And he leaned over me and he came this close to me.
Wow.
And I'm there nose to nose with this person. And he says to me, behold my face, remember me. And I looked at him and I said, who are you? Who could you be? Could you be the Christ? Could you be my soul? Could you be the soul of a Sufi master? Who are you? I know you, but I haven't seen you in so long. And then he said to me, the first time was a request. Second time was a command. He said, behold my face, remember me. And again I said, who are you? I know you, but I haven't seen you in so long. And then he said, We don't want you speaking to people of what you know. And I'm like, what?
Wow.
Who is we? Are you threatening me?
Yeah, who's we?
Who is we? Are you threatening me? And he said, Lucifer has taken over Islam and is going to use it as his vehicle to destroy mankind.
Wow.
And I said, I nodded, I understand.
Yeah.
And he nodded, he stood up, he turned around, and he slowly went down, and he slowly went, and
Wow.
my body was
Oh, I bet, man.
freaking. I was pouring
Oh, I'm sure.
sweat.
But
All the life, the cold of my heat had left my body.
yeah,
Every cell was screaming,
I bet.
shrieking in terror. I could hear the screams. Yet my mind, my body, my mind and my soul and my spirit were in harmony.
Yeah.
I love you, but I don't want to see your face. I heard the message. I looked at my body and I felt pity for
Yeah.
my carnal self. But walking, he went out the wall, into the wall.
Yeah.
Subsequently, I discovered that the day I'd arrived at Oberlin, the Western world's foremost expert on Islam, had died,
Wow.
typing to the end of his days, and fell on his manuscript.
Holy shit.
And it took me
I
10
wonder
years
what he saw.
Yeah, I was thinking, like, well, could this be?
Wow.
I almost died. Maybe well, it did die. So, to make a long story short, it took me 10 years to get that manuscript, and it revealed how satanic verses and a Luciferic heresy took over Islam,
Wow.
and how Lucifer worship became the center of their mystical
There's a lot
systems.
of controversy and people who claim the same thing about the Vatican and Catholicism.
Yes, well, it's true too.
Yeah.
It went from there to the Templars, to the Freemasons, to the Sabbatean sect of Judaism, from the Sabbateans into Eastern Europe, from the Sabbateans into the Frankists, from the Frankists into the Vatican.
And, you just, if you look at the way that Islam was then, puppeteered by these same deep state elements to create these, terrorists.
Yes.
Then you see who and what Lucifer really is.
We're dealing with global theatrics in a high-level game of chess played on the devil's chessboard.
Yep.
That's the name of a book by David Talbot. And he exposes how Alan Dulles and John Foster Dulles, real hardcore Nazis, took over the deep state, fashioned the deep state, and created all of these wars that are now engulfing us. I mean, we're still not out of them. But
still, literally, we were in Afghanistan with no objective besides, quote, spreading them out. I mean, they even tried to, at one point, the propaganda was, well, we're helping the women. You ask the women over there how much help they got and how they're doing right now. 20 years, I don't know how many trillions of dollars spent. No objective in sight. I don't know. I'm sure you're aware of the Afghan papers. People in general aren't aware of the Afghan papers, but, basically it's a detail of the complete charade, whatever, however you say that word, that Afghanistan
if you're French,
was.
you say charade.
Yeah, that's right. The charade. But forever wars. Finally, we have a name for what we like to do. What the American government is puppeteered to do by these same people. Create a way to launder money. I mean, when it all comes down to it, it's a glorified money laundering power scheme, and they're finally being exposed, at least in a bigger part of society than they ever have been. Because we know there was no weapons of mass destruction. We know that we didn't. Now, most people know we had no fucking idea what we were doing in Afghanistan for so long. Even the soldiers didn't know. You have people dying. These are good men, being shipped off, and they think that they're doing a good thing, and they get there.
Patriotism has been used against us.
Yeah,
it's that simple.
That's
I'd like to share screen one more time to wrap up the President Kennedy.
Sure.
experience.
The other thing I wanted to ask you about
Sure.
was, when you were going on George Norrie's Coast to Coast radio show, and you spoke about Google's algorithm, and how I always laugh because the algorithms are there's a element involved in the way algorithms work that leaves a lot of leeway for, let's just say serendipity, or for things to happen, right? And I know that you told George, you said, I forget the phrase you used, something, that God works through Google's algorithm for you anyway.
Oh,
And
yes, yes, yes. I said,
and I thought
I
that
have
was
this knack.
awesome.
Yeah, I have this knack. It's
Yeah.
intuition. Over the years, I've been studying and teaching Tai Chi for 50 years. And I'm very close to my spirit, and I've learned how to listen. So I have this knack for discovery. And it's not linear, it's not logical, it's intuitive, it's instinctive. And I said to George, God moves the mouse, I just click it.
That's right.
Because
That's right.
so many times it's been like even an accidental movement of the mouse, and then click, and then it pops up. Or one morning, about 4 or 5 years ago, I woke up on a Sunday morning, kind of groggy, had my coffee. I pushed the mouse and I turned on the computer, and Google Earth was on, and I hadn't opened Google Earth.
No shit.
But Google Earth was open, and the mouse was on a spot in the Atlantic Ocean. And I went to I said, who turned on Google Earth? And I went to reach, and I was going to move it. And somebody said, don't move the mouse. Don't move the mouse. Just click it. Just click it. So I clicked it, and it went in. And I click, and it's in the ocean off Haiti. I click it, and I click it. I click it again, and it goes underwater. I found the crossroads of Atlantis.
No shit.
Collapse. Yeah, right off the coast of Haiti and Puerto Rico.
Wow.
Crossroads of Atlantis. And I did a long program with Richard Hoagland on the subject. So at the time, I didn't know how to capture pictures, so I shot pictures off my screen.
Mm-hmm.
But what I'd like to do, can you turn on the screen sharing one more time?
Yeah.
Because I'd like to show people what I consider my masterpiece and the proof of everything.
Okay, you should be able to.
Okay. What's happening is I'm clicking the icon, but it is not popping the big screen up for Zoom. And what I wanted to do was to show the composite photo that I had.
The settings haven't changed, so you should be able to. Hold on.
No, it's not you. It's Zoom. I don't like Zoom. I'm doing a special Zoom meeting for you.
Oh, I appreciate that.
Because Zoom is Chinese.
Yes, and it's
Zoom
owned
goes
by
to China before it goes
and
to
Google.
Yeah,
of all people, they're.
Oh, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to email you the photograph, which is the split face photo composite that I did.
Oh, of JD Tippett.
Yeah, JD Tippett.
Oh yeah, I love that. So I have that. I can we'll edit that right in.
Okay, you can put that in.
I saw that.
I'm going to explain to you the whole purpose of the visit of the ghost. Okay. As I said to him, I know you, but I haven't seen you in so long. Who are you? I couldn't recognize him because of the expression on the face. It was so grave, it was so stern, it was so surly that I couldn't recognize him for who he was. But 13 years later, I was invited to go to Stonehenge at midnight with the Druid Order. And when they put on their robes, they were white robes with a white headdress. And I saw that the ghost that came was not dressed like a pharaoh. He was dressed like a druid.
Wow.
In white. And what he had was a Celtic funeral shroud. The Irish and the Scottish are very, like in, they do it in Braveheart. Funeral shroud. So that was the veil that he had on. I asked him not to lift it. But I saw his face because I could see it this close, every feature. And that's why I say that John F. Kennedy is the only man that ever solved his own murder, because he showed me the expression on his face to look enough like Tippett for me to recognize that Tippett and JFK looked that much alike. And find those pictures. I found them, two of them with the same expression. I split it in two. I joined it to show you that the body that is presented as the Bethesda victim in the morgue in Bethesda on November 22nd, 23rd, 24th, 25th,
Yeah.
1963 was Officer J.D. Tippett. And that the ghost of John F. Kennedy came out of the grave on the night that Ronald Reagan was shot.
Wow.
And reached out to me, a brother, a person who loved him like a brother.
Yeah.
And I have an Irish heritage by osmosis.
Yeah.
And he showed me what I needed to know just to solve this case, you know.
That's amazing. I mean, you are certainly connected to him. I can sense that. I can feel that, you know. I mean, first of all, your love for him and your complete relentlessness in trying to, you know, help people understand how big what happened is and what it means to the world, you know, and your dedication to it. You know what I mean? I mean, this makes a strong connection.
That came to me from heaven, you know. God loves the world. God loves all of us.
Yeah.
And he has seen how the devil's chessboard is being played, and all of us were fooled. I was fooled. I was fooled so many times by the government using MK Ultra mind control, which is actually what led me into psychology. The first time I saw the Zapruder film, they blacked out the frame, and I thought I blinked. I was watching with great intent. As the car passed the sign, I blinked at 7 o'clock, CBS News. So I said, I'll watch it again at 11. They show it again. So I watch it again. This time I'm concentrating with 110%. And right up at the TV screen, again, bing, I blinked. And I walked away with a nauseous feeling in my stomach. And you know what? I felt a sense of shame. I was ashamed of myself for not having had the concentration to keep my eyes open at that critical moment and done the same thing that I'd done at 7 o'clock. Well, 30 years later, I found out I had kept my eyes open.
You're looking at a different film.
No, they put a black frame so that 20 million people watching that same thing at that moment, they all thought they blinked.
Wow.
You see, mind control working on a subliminal level. And that's why I describe the Zapruder film as a consciously engineered mass hallucination.
That's exactly what it is.
It's an optical illusion when you see it alone.
Yeah.
But when the whole world sees the film that fooled the world, it's a mass hallucination.
And it causes mass psychosis. I mean, it's absolutely the trauma, you know. Right. You saw when I heard you tell George Norrie about when you first laid eyes on and you know you laid eyes on a version of the Zapruder film that probably 99.9%. Yeah. I mean,
some of the missing frames. Yeah, the missing frames.
The one with the missing frames. And so,
I found a very raw intermediate work copy of the Zapruder film. And you can see in studying this, what they were planning to take out. It was like a work copy. That's all I can tell you.
Yeah.
But they had cut out some things, but they hadn't finished the product. And when it goes by the grassy knoll, the head explodes and a piece of brain tissue stretches up like a black snake like this. Imagine this, you just go like that. It's horrible.
It's a difference, almost like, so the way you described like what Jackie did, oh my God, it was so.
The frame up, they claim that Jackie tried to run away, that she went into panic. She did no such thing. When he got shot, the first two times, he started saying, "Oh, I've been shot." He was gagging.
That's when she reached her arm around him.
She slid over to him. She put her arm around him, saying, "Oh, Jack, what's wrong? What's going on?" And she had her face to his left side.
That's right.
And then the bullets opened up on his head. And when the back of his head went off, her arm reached out as if trying to catch it
instinctually,
in the air. Instinctively. Like you play baseball and somebody flips the ball to you, you have that instinct.
Yeah.
She had that like a cat. And then when she saw that she didn't catch it, she turned around on her knees, crawled out very methodically. She reached for it, clutched it. She actually fell on her face. She
Yeah.
could have rolled off the car to her death. And then the Clint Hill, the fake hero, comes in and he shoved her back like a duffel bag into the back seat.
That's right.
So that was another tremendous insight. But this is such a terrible scene. I can understand
My
why it
God.
was
Yeah.
taken out. I showed it to one person. I sent the frames to George Newry, and he didn't have the stomach
Yeah.
to show them.
Yeah.
But I showed them to Richard Dolan, who's a very dear friend of mine in
Oh,
this
is
field.
Richard a friend of yours? Oh, cool.
Oh yeah, we were together. We've been together a few times at lectures in New York, and we both presented at the Secret Space Program, Breakaway Civilization
Yeah.
in San Francisco. And I had an epiphany then. I met an eyewitness from Dallas, Texas, who told me who paid for the assassination, which I may tell you later. But Richard Dolan and I were having a Zoom chat or a messenger or something. And I told him I had this film. And he said, I said, you wouldn't believe. He said, no, well, let him show it to me. I said, Richard, it's terrible. It's a horrible thing to see. I don't know if you could. He said, I can take it. Show it to me. And I was watching him on the screen because he had his camera on. I had my camera on. So I did a screen share, but I was able to see his face. And when he saw these 4 frames, it was like his spirit left him.
Yeah.
I saw it. He just collapsed because you know what I had done? I had shattered all of the cognitive dissonance, all of the assumptions that he had heard that had framed his view in that one moment. Oh, they all fell apart. And I saw the change go through him.
Yeah.
And he became dejected. And I said,
sure.
I see what it did to you, right? It did it to you. You see it now, right? And he said, yeah, I see it.
Yeah.
But on the same token, I want to say that when I told Mr. Newman and I verified everything he said, I saw a man reduce his age by 30 years.
Wow.
He had been kind of a downcast, fat, plump, old Texan and telling me. And when I finished telling him, Mr. Newman, everything you saw is true. The Zapruder film is doctored. I know what happened. I respect you. And I want you to know that they fooled you using the Zapruder film. And then he went like this. He went, pulled up his stomach, sucked the stomach in, and he said, anybody out here want to go out for a drink?
Ready for a party.
I saw 30 years of confusion, self-doubt, cognitive dissonance just drop away from this man and rejuvenate him, if only for that day.
Yeah.
And I saw the healing powers of the truth.
There's something to be said about it. It may be painful at first, but
you
know what I mean?
Know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. No, nothing is more true on earth. And the lie will make you sick.
That's right. And when you force people to swallow lies, you get a sick society. And that's where we're at right now. You know, I was watching Mark Lane's film, and you literally see the transformation. I mean, we'll close out JFK, but people go from telling exactly what they saw, and then in literally 5 minutes, they'll finish off with, but I know that can't be what I saw because we know now. I was told he was in, it's like.
Oh, you do that very well. You really do that very well. I knew Mark Lane. Mark Lane,
no kidding.
So courageous.
Awesome guy.
To come out 2 years and 4 years after with the film, that when you saw, and all the information in that film,
man,
like Roy Vaughn was the guy that led Ruby down the garage, gave him the eye. That's an amazing.
It is. People have it's on YouTube.
Yes.
I mean, like, talk about a bombshell just sitting out there, and this is a smoking gun, if there ever was one, and it's right. It's for free. You can see it right now. It's on YouTube. It's Mark Lane's.
Tell the people the name.
Yeah. Oh my God, I was just saying it. Just two words, I think. I have it. Hold on, let me check it.
Well, anyway, I met Mark Lane here in New York, and I was on his radio show once asking questions about Ruby and Oswald, and he was the lawyer who had been called to represent Oswald, and he went down to Dallas. And
oh no! Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Last word, or plausible denial. No, that's his book. Last
That's
word.
his book.
Rush to Judgment is the name of the documentary.
Yes,
Rush to Judgment. 3 words. Yeah.
Indeed. Yes, Rush to Judgment. That's a treasure trove of
Yes, it
eyewitness,
is. Yes, it
eyewitness
is.
testimony. It's, all these people, you know, I want to give credit. You know, I put this thing together, but David Lifton,
My God,
Mark Lane, Mark Eddowes, the list, James Fetzer, Jim Mars. Jim Mars and I were really close. I gave Jim Mars a document that produced his books, Alien Agenda and the Fourth Reich.
Oh, cool.
November 21st of 1996, November 22nd, 1996. We met in Dallas for a brainstorming session. The top 10 experts on the Zapruder film all got in a room, locked ourselves in there for almost 11 hours, and all presented our evidence proving the Zapruder film was false. And then we went up, and he and James Fetzer and Dr. Mantic and Roy Schaefer and I were in a room together, and I told, hey, Jim, I just discovered this email, not an email, I got it through email, but I just discovered this CIA document that Kennedy wrote November 12th, 1963, telling CIA and DOD and NASA that we were going to go to the moon with the Russians, and that we were going to share UFO information. And interestingly, in the corner, it has some written in handwriting. It says, Angleton has MJ executive. He says, you have a copy of that? I said, yeah, sure, I'll send it to you. So I sent it to him, and so both of us worked together, and we tracked down this memo. And the MJ executive is referring to MJ-12. And Angleton was the chief of counterintelligence. And Angleton is the man who composed the burnt memo. And Angleton and Cord Meyer and Alan Dulles and the CIA were the masterminds.
That's right.
Of the plot to kill President Kennedy.
And they had, as you can tell, I always tell everyone, when they do something like that, there's 1,001 reasons they justify it. And, that was one of the many. Kennedy was a problem in so many ways for their agenda. And say what you want about the Kennedys, but JFK and Bobby, their idea was to make the world a better place. And they were determined to do that, even within the confines and the pigsty that had become Washington at the time. And, they were working with what they had. And my God, they don't make them like that anymore. And then part of the reason why they don't is because they were successful in this, they didn't get away with it, but they got away with it in a lot of ways, unfortunately. But, the truth is permeating the consciousness of the planet, and there are patriots like yourself who are determined to help people see it, and that is a spiritual endeavor. That's why I'm such a fan of your work, Robert.
Thank you. Thank you.
And
the last thing I'd like to say,
sure.
People criticize the Kennedys. They were flawed men. We were all flawed men. Nobody's perfect, but we all tried. But the thing about John and Robert Kennedy is not who they were, but who they wanted us to become. And that's why I hold to their ideals. The other thing is I want to remember somebody in the UFO community who was at San Francisco, San Mateo at the Secret Space Program Breakaway Civilization Conference. His name was Ed Grimsley, and he was an expert in UFOs. He'd been in the United States Air Force, seen UFOs, and he was the one that started encouraging people to use night vision goggles to watch the UFO battles over California. So at this conference, he took me aside after my presentation on Saturday. It was close to noon, and he said, hey, can we have lunch together? I said, sure, let's go over to the cafeteria. We went over to the cafeteria, sat us down, got our food, we're sitting at, went to a round table, completely empty, would seat 8 people. We're sitting down, and this young couple comes over and said to me, can we sit there and have lunch with you? And I said, of course, sure. And Ed said, excuse me, I'm sorry. I want to speak to him in private. And they said, oh, I didn't know. And they said, oh, I'm sorry. They went away. And I thought, man, this is serious. So I sat down with Ed to eat lunch. And he said to me, I want you to know I know who you are. I said, you know who I am? You mean about John F. Kennedy assassination? Yeah. He said, yeah, I know who you are. I said, oh, because I have something I want to tell you. I said, oh. He said, well, go right ahead. I said, well, in 1963, I was the best shot in all of Texas. I won every shooting contest.
Right.
I was the Texas state champion in shooting, rifle shooting. Oh, he said, one day in June of 1963, I was at a shooting range. And somebody came up to me and I heard him say, hey, you're a pretty good shot. And I turned around and said, thank you. And there was this businessman standing there and he repeated, yeah, you're a pretty good shot. Then he said to me, are you interested in a job? And I said, a job? Yeah, sure. And he said, okay. And he gave me his card. And I took the card. He said, call my office and make an appointment. So a couple of days later, I called the number and I made an appointment. I had to go to Houston to meet with this businessman. So I went there, got in his office, they ushered me in. And then he said to me again, you know, we've been watching you for a long time. You're a pretty good shot.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I said, thank you. And he said, you interested in a job? And I said, well, how much does it pay? And he said, $2 million. And I said, whoa, that's a lot of money. And he said, what do I have to do? I said, well, you got to kill somebody. He said, oh, who would I have to kill? The man said, John F. Kennedy. And I said,
Wow.
oh, no, brother, I don't want any part of that. So that was that. We just agreed, we shook hands, and we knew I wasn't supposed to talk about this, or I haven't spoken to anyone about it.
Holy shit.
I was flabbergasted. So I said to him, wait a minute, Ed. You're telling me that in June of 1963, you were in a shooting range and a businessman came over to you and offered you $2 million to shoot John F. Kennedy? And he looked at me steely-eyed. He never blinked. He said, yep. I said, and do you remember who he is? Yep. Are you willing to tell me who he is? Yep. Nope. Well, who was it? George H.W. Bush.
Fucking Poppy. I knew it.
That's right.
I knew it.
Exactly. And you know what? This relief, the sensation, just like you will know the truth and the truth will set you free. That happened to me at that moment. Like, wow, I knew it. I knew it. It was Operation 40. It was the anti-Castro Cubans. It was the CIA. It was the UFOs. It was going to, oh yeah, let's not forget, George Bush and Operation 40 were running from the FBI because they had kept on the attacks on Cuba.
That's right.
And blowing up refineries. And Kennedy was afraid that he was going to get us into World War III with Khrushchev, and he was making him look like a liar to Khrushchev because he promised not to do this with Castro anymore, and he was actually negotiating peace with Castro. Yeah. As a matter of fact, that November 22nd, when he was killed, he had an emissary negotiating
that's right. And that was Castro, another problem
Castro
for Poppy
and company. You know, Nikita Khrushchev cried. His son said, you know, Nikita Khrushchev actually cried tears of agony because he said, it's all over. You know, we were working toward peace. And Castro basically said the same thing. This is terrible. Everything has changed.
Yeah.
So we're getting to the truth.
Yep.
On our own initiative. It's our civic obligation. Also healing the mind, healing the soul of America. John F. Kennedy, Martin Luther King, Robert Kennedy, John Lennon.
Mm-hmm.
They were all in skeletons in America's closet.
That's right.
And they cannot rest
A
in
lot of
peace until the
skeletons.
truth is known. But now you know the truth. And I thank you for giving me the opportunity to share it.
Oh, it was my pleasure, Robert. You know, there's so much that I want to talk to you about. I know that we're probably really low on time, but you're just gonna have to come on my show again because
Sure.
you know,
Sure.
it just incredible body of work. And I had a feeling that if we started on JFK, there's just so much there to talk about. And you've learned, I've learned so much from studying your work, and you've learned so much, you know, and also, of course, like all the names you mentioned,
Yes.
you know, when you dive into that body of work, it's just, you know, there's a lot there. And you know, the cognitive dissonance, it has no choice, it has no place in a mind that has seen those things. And the more people who, you know, there's great power in numbers, and the more people who know, you know, the less chance the truth can be swept under the rug anymore. And I believe that is part of, you know, we're trying to make things right in this country in a lot of ways. And the way that you do that, I mean, there's a reason why part of the steps of AA is you have to go out and apologize and tell people the truth about what you are, what you've been doing, right? And
Yes.
there's a reason why there's an amends that happens when that, you know, if you've ever had someone or had to do that yourself, there's a great burden that
sure.
lifts,
Yes,
you
of
know,
course. Of course.
it's very healing. And it kind of, it makes a bridge where there was none. It's a beautiful thing. If you've ever experienced it, or
and forgiveness, you know,
yes,
forgiveness, forgiving yourself, forgiving other people, not living with a grudge. You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's very important.
We're gonna have to do this again real soon. I'm gonna, you know, I'm gonna stay in touch with you, and I'm definitely gonna get your ebook. But you know, before I let you go, I'm excited to ask you this question. I always ask my guests this because I feel it's you never know who's listening, and I don't believe in accidents or coincidences. So I love to share, because you just never know what little bit of, you know, an expression or a mantra or, you know, a program code, because since we know how programmable we all are, you know, if you could whisper into the minds of you know, every sleeping human tonight, and plant a seed, a mantra, or a code that would, you know, allow for a greater expression of themselves, you know, and a greater life on this beautiful planet we have, you know, what would you say to everyone?
I would say, open your eyes, be true to yourself. That's it.
Beautiful.
You know what's good, you know what's true. Follow that.
Yeah. Follow your eyes. Yeah. Yeah.
Open your eyes.
Open your eyes.
Be true to yourself. So the last thing I'd like to say, to just sum up this, it's a spiritual experience that I've described to you, the core experience of my life. I've identified that it came to me with this information for you. John F. Kennedy came out of the grave to give me this information. And I told you that he was dressed, the ghost was dressed in white from head to toe, with a funeral shroud. When I read that was 81, and about 1994, 95, 14 years later, I read The Death of a President. And I found out that we all know that President Kennedy was buried in a sealed casket. But he was dressed in white robes. His head was covered with a white shroud, and he had a funeral shroud.
Wow.
After the family viewed his body, which was not his body, it was typical.
Right.
Jackie Kennedy said that doesn't look like Jack.
Yeah, that's right.
At all. He looks like a wax dummy in Madame Tussauds museum.
That's right.
So,
She did say that.
yeah, she did. So anyway,
Anyway,
he's happy that you know the truth now.
I'm happy to help spread it. It's been an honor, Robert. Thank you so
Thank you.
much for your time. We'll definitely have to do it again. You know, I'm a big fan of your work, and it's
Thank
been it's been an honor learning about everything you're doing, and now getting a chance to share it with my listeners. And you know, I look forward to talking to you again one day
Sure.
soon.
We'll do it soon.
Okay,
Thank
my
you.
friend. You take care.
Thank you.
Thanks again.
Peace.
Bye.
Oh, peace will come,
Peace.
but not through faint hearts.
That's right. Thank you.
Okay.